Pivot tables are a great tool for quick analysis and also as a data feeding tool for your dashboards. Now, people, however, hardly use these as an integrated table in their actual reports that they print out. Now, the formatting of the pivot has majorly improved in the past years, but they're still not seen as that visually pleasant for the final report. So they're generally integrated in the back end, and a nicer table that references this pivot is put on the front end. I will first give you a quick introduction to the pivot, and then I will show you these neat, nice design tricks you can use to bring your pivot in the spotlight. So let's start first with the basics. If you've never used pivots, they can be quite intimidating at first because they have so many options and you have so many choices. But don't worry, you don't need to know all of this. All you need to do is to learn a handful of features, just a few buttons, and the rest will come as you develop your own pivots on your own data. If you do know the pivot quite well, feel free to just jump to the next lecture. First off, let's have a quick look at the benefits of pivot tables. They enable you to analyze your data without writing complex calculations. They also help you find relationships between data. You can also link to data sources that are outside Excel, and you can summarize your data with dynamic charts or pivot charts. Now let's quickly insert our pivot table. This is the data that we have. It's for the sales agents by month, year, the quantity they sold, actual revenue, and planned revenue. Now notice that I have more than one line for the same combination. So January agent A has 3 lines in this case. For February they have more. Now that's what the good thing about Pivot is, that it does the summarizing for you without you needing to write a formula. To insert the pivot, all you have to do is highlight this, including your headers. Then I'm just going to press Control Shift down. Insert a pivot table. But one really important point here is that make sure none of your column headers are empty. They need to have a label in them. Then you just make sure this is the correct range. Here's the place that you can connect to an external data source if you wanted to. And then you need to decide if you want to put this on a new worksheet or you want to keep it here on the same worksheet and define the location. Let's put it here. This is basically your column headers given to you in this form, and this is the layout of your pivot table. You can decide what you want to have where, and it's just like a normal table. So this is your row, column, these are your values, and here you can have a filter on top where you can choose one or more filters for this report. You just have to play around a bit to see the type of reports you want. And don't worry, you can't ruin anything here. You just drag and drop. If you don't like it, you just kick it out again. Let's tick mark. You can tick mark. Excel tries to figure out what's the best place for it. In most cases, it's okay. Sometimes it's not. In this case, it's fine. These are my values, and I want them in the heart of my table. For rows, I can decide, do I want the months or the sales agents? Well, first off, let me just put the months here. Sales agents, I'm going to put as my filter. Now, in this table, I just have 1 year. So I'm just going to leave that out. In this case, I can leave the column labels empty. If I wanted to, I could also bring the sales agents here instead of the filter. And you see how it looks? I get January, and then for agent A, I have the revenue. For actuals, then I have budget. Okay, so that's how column labels work. The report filter is basically this. So I can select agent B and say OK. I could say I want multiple items, so I can select A, B, and C and have a look at the data. And that's where all the summing is done for you. So you can see sum of actual revenue for January for these agents that I've selected. Now you can also see that you get these two additional tabs for pivot table tools. You have an Options tab and a Design tab. A lot of these options you can get to by right mouse clicking in your pivot. One useful one is if you ever do close this, because it gets in the way sometimes, and it doesn't come back when you're on your pivot, you come here to Options and you can toggle it back on. Field headers are basically this one. You see the row headers, and if you had columns, you also would see that for columns. So this one just turns it on or off. Kind of looks better like this. These buttons are for groupings in here. So if I had more than one category in my rows, and let's do that, let me just switch this to all, and let's bring the sales agent in here. You see these buttons? I can group them and ungroup them. And if I take away these field buttons, you can't do that anymore. So it just shows it to you the way you see it before you click this. Now, one thing that I change when I design pivots are the headers. Because I don't want to see the sum of actual revenue, I want to change it to actual revenue. But when you do that and it's identical to this, then you can't, because it says the name already exists. To be able to make it look like the same name, you just add an additional space after your name. You can do that for planned revenue as well. Or before the name, it's also fine. And the other thing is with the number formatting. So if I wanted to get the numbers with the 1000 separator in them, I can right mouse click on any of these cells. Don't go to Format Cells, because this only uses the normal Excel formatting and it only applies it to this cell. So if your pivot table extends, then they're not going to be formatted in the same way. So don't use this, but instead go to Value Field Settings. Here you can also change the name if you want. You see that's the space I added. And click on Number Format. And now define the formatting here. We want number and 1000 separator. Okay, so that's for this. And you do have to do it one by one. You can't just highlight these and do what we did. So you do have to go back to the planned revenue and do that as well. Under Design, you will see a lot of different styling options that you can apply to your pivot. You also have the ability to control your totals. So these are subtotals for every month, and you can say if you want them or not, and if you want to show them on the bottom or you want to show it on the top. So that's the way it looks on the bottom. That's the top. This way I say I don't want to show it at all. Grand total is the main total that you see at the bottom, and if I had more column headers, then I can see a column total as well. So I can turn it completely off and I don't have any total on the bottom. You can also change the style of your pivot based on the styles here. You have some options available. You can decide on the color, the format, or you can completely clear the styling and it takes you to this default. This looks better. The other good thing about the pivot is the double click. If we change the layout a bit, if I put months up there and I have sales agent here, and I'm looking through this report and I'm wondering, okay, why did agent A have 5,000? I just have to double click on this 5,000. So watch what happens. It creates a new sheet and it puts all the information that's behind this number. So it allows me to quickly see how the data is adding up. You can always delete this sheet if you don't need it. Your pivot is still there, everything is working fine. You can double click again, it's there. Now let's take a look at the pivot table options. The ones I find most useful are the 4 error values show. So if I have errors showing up in some of the calculations and I don't want to show them, I tick mark this. And also for empty cells show. If I do need that the columns expand when I refresh, I leave this check mark on. If I don't, because I have fixed my formatting the way I want it, then I take it away. In printing, this is a good one if your pivot runs across multiple pages and you want to repeat the row labels on each of the pages. A lot of the other ones are duplicates, like these grand totals that we can see under Design or under Display, the Show, Expand, Collapse buttons, which we can see here. So don't think these are all additional options to what you have. Some are, and some aren't. Now let's check if our pivot table really works. Let's just change a number first. I'm going to change the Agent A, the 300, to something that we're going to notice. Again, nothing happens here until I refresh. And to refresh, you can right mouse click, select refresh. Now my number's there. You can also refresh by going to here. But what happens, let's just put these back. What happens if I add something to the bottom of my table? That's Agent D. We can even just look at June. It's this, so I'm going to refresh. Nothing happens. Why? Because of my source data range. Remember, originally I selected that range, and it's only stuck to this range. This is not included. If I wanted to include this, I would have to expand this range. And this can be annoying if you have a pivot that's dynamic that you want to update the moment you add your data for the next month. You don't want to come here and always expand the range. So what you can do instead of this is that you turn your data set into an Excel table. You never have to worry about the data range again. And the way you do that is by pressing Ctrl T. So just go anywhere in your table and then press Ctrl T. Does our table have headers? Yes. The first thing I do, I don't like these designs. I just take it away, clear the design under Table Tools. It looks like my old table, but now it's an official Excel table. And what that means is, you see you get this little blue thing on the bottom. It shows that this is where your table ends. So now if I add data though, did you see that blue thing? It jumped down. So my table is expanding without me doing anything. And now let's go back and let's refresh our table. And it's there. That's why I suggest that whenever you create pivot tables, make sure that your original data source is an Excel table. And you know that when you see the Table Tools option here activated. It saves you a lot of time down the line. What if you wanted to create a second pivot table that looked different? So here I have the months on top and the agents here. What if I wanted to have the agents in the columns and the months here? The best way to do this is that you copy this pivot table, paste it somewhere wherever you want it, and then change that one. This way you're using the same pivot cache. Whereas if you were creating your pivot table from scratch, you'll be duplicating your pivot cache and adding to the memory and slowing things down. The way you would copy this pivot table, you can just also highlight it and copy it. The proper way is you can select the entire pivot table, then do Control-C, and then go down wherever you want your new pivot table and do Control-V. And now when you click on this, go back to your field list and change the design the way you want. So I said I wanted my sales agents here and I wanted my months here. That's now my second table, and my original table is the same. And now if I add data to this, they are both running off the same pivot cache, so I just need to refresh once and they both update. Okay, let's test this. Let's switch this to all. Let's refresh. It's here and it's here as well. And deleting a pivot table is easy, so let's say you no longer need this. You can go to Options, select your entire pivot table, and then press the Clear key.